Hello, good afternoon everybody, and welcome to today's webinar session from Eclipse, which is entitled Infor Query and Analysis Evolve and Overview. So the subject of this webinar topic this afternoon is of course the next release of the Q&A reporting suite, Query and Analysis, and that next release is called Evolve. Now, I was hoping initially that this was going to be a lot more of an interactive session, but unfortunately Infor have still yet to release the final version of the product to partners like ourselves here at Eclipse. We do have a little bit of a sneak preview of some of the technology, but it's not a fully featured version, so this will probably take the format more of a technical briefing. I can go through a lot of the detail, and there's a lot of things in here we need to talk about and sort of bring to your attention. So just in terms of the agenda, let's just have a look at that. So just have some quick introductions. So my name is Richard Hughes. I'm Director of Technology and Services here at Eclipse, and this session was put together by Emma Mitchell. I'll put our contact details up, of course, at the end of the session. So what we'll talk about this afternoon is just a little bit of the background and context behind Q&A Evolve. What is happening, why is it happening, and where's the product going? What does it mean for Sun Systems users, existing and new customers, and what does it mean for the current version of Q&A? We'll talk specifically about some of the new functionality within Q&A Evolve, and this essentially breaks down into two areas, and we'll see why a little bit later on. But effectively, there's the sort of core Q&A Evolve reporting, reporting suite that we'll look at. I'll take a look at some of the key features in that. Just discuss some key changes in the product architecture, and then talk a little bit about Evolve BI and dashboards, which is the second key part of the functionality that's going to be introduced as part of Q&A Evolve. And then finally we'll take a look at the overall product roadmap, as I said, both for Q&A Evolve and for the existing versions of Q&A with Query and Analysis. And then finally at the end we'll wrap up with some questions and answers. Okay, so what's the thinking behind this? Why is there a new version of Q&A?
Hi Richard, sorry to interrupt. I can't see your
exactly
screen.
What is it?
Richard, did you get my message? Just unable to see your screen. Thank you.
Okay, sorry. So again, for some reason we seem to have some screen update problems. So in case you missed it, that was the agenda, and the background and context is where we're at now. So I was saying, what's happening? What's the background to all of this? And what's happening and why is it happening? So just in terms of a couple of things, I guess. One is a sort of reorganization with Infor itself. So effectively, what's been happening at Infor is they've merged a lot of the development teams across their BI product stack. Now they had a various tool sets within the Infor stable for dealing with business intelligence, reporting, performance management. So a lot of these things historically have overlapped quite a bit, and these were products that were probably acquired by Infor through acquisitions of other companies. The old MIS product stack, Application Studio. There was some limited dashboarding capability in there. We had, of course, Q&A for Sun Systems users and a few other things as well. So effectively, what Infor have tried to do is they want to bring all of that together and ultimately simplify their own sort of setup and have one combined ad hoc Q&A reporting and business intelligence offering. So Evolve effectively is the way that will be delivered. As we'll see, Q&A Evolve is is the first iteration of dashboards for Sun Systems users. And as we'll see on the roadmap, this will ultimately include reworked versions of both the Q&A plugin for Excel and for people coming from the Office Plus background for the performance management side. Those two products will effectively be combined, and the Evolve will be, as I said, the single reporting and BI offering for dashboarding within Infor. But probably more importantly, from a Sun Systems user perspective as well, there are a number of reasons why Evolve needed to happen. Primarily because the existing technology behind Q&A reporting is limited. It's an old code base. A lot of that stuff was written in old versions of VBA for Excel. It's really sort of limited in terms of how it can adapt easily to the latest Microsoft platform technologies. And Infor, of course, wanted to also provide a solution that could work easily with the cloud. So the cloud is again something that's very significant in terms of developments within Infor. We'll be seeing later this year the business cloud offerings from Infor. So cloud solutions, software as a service versions of Sun Systems, and of course, in order to for that to work successfully, there needs to be a cloud compatible version of the reporting tools. So things like being able to run in a multi-tenanted environment within the cloud. Again, from a technology perspective, there's no way that could have been done within the existing version of Q&A. So really, in order to achieve all of these things, Infor effectively had to completely rewrite the product. So I think one thing that is really important to state at the beginning of this session is that Q&A Evolve is not just, in fact it's not a tool, it's not an upgrade at all. So it's not, one of the questions we get asked quite a lot is, well, is Q&A Evolve, it's just the an upgrade for the existing Q&A to enable 64-bit compatibility. No, absolutely not. That's not the case. Q&A Evolve is a completely separate product, and effectively it is being marketed as such. And, we'll talk about maybe pricing and those kinds of things towards the end of the session, or we can deal with that in the questions and answers. But effectively, Q&A Evolve is a completely separate product, and that is a reflection of the fact that it had to be completely rewritten from the ground up. We'll see as we go through these slides later on. There are some things for existing users we have some tools available to us for existing users to migrate some existing reports, but there are certain areas where there is not a direct upgrade path. So that's something you need to I guess we need to be very clear about. Q&A Evolve is a new product to all intents and purposes, so that does imply some reworking of existing functionality depending on which elements the existing Q&A suite you're already using. Okay, so with that out of the way, what's in there? So if we break it down, as I said, into a couple of different areas, if we look at the sort of core Evolve products, the first thing to say is that everything from a reporting perspective, so report design perspective, is now it's now handled completely within the Excel environment. So it's the next generation Q&A product, but everything has now been put into the Excel environment. So pretty much if you think about the old product suite, Q&A Excel, Executive, and Alert, effectively all of those things now sit within the Excel environment. So whether we're doing ad hoc queries, we can schedule reports for distribution, i.e. using alert functionality, we can do that directly from within from within Microsoft Excel. We've of course still got the traditional bulk upload tools with data send, but some of the executive functionality. So I guess the first tranche of executive functionality to be delivered is in the initial release of Q&A Evolve. So the ability to do things like drill downs, breakouts, expansions. Those that analysis functionality is now available in Excel, and effectively the executive report writer as we know it will cease to exist in Evolve. So everything is in the Excel environment. Again, another question we get asked quite often is, does the new version of Q&A, does Q&A evolve? Is it web enabled? Again, the answer to some degree is yes and no. So, Q&A Evolve is not a web-based version of, Q&A. So, I guess the reason this question probably comes about, of course, is because, especially with, Infor 10 later releases of Sun Systems, we have a high focus on doing things in the web, in the browser, but we have a fully web-enabled Sun Systems client, but Q&A is not fully web-enabled, so we don't have a full web-enabled version of the application running in the browser. That functionality is typically what you would use something like dashboards for. However, what Q&A Evolve does do is that it provides a web service. So it's a web service architecture. So what that means is we can have a true client-server architecture, proper centralized administration, and in terms of getting it set up on a client, all you do is you install the add-in for Excel, and then you just point the add-in to the URL of the web service, and you're up and running. That's it. So it's a really small client footprint. Okay, in terms of the key changes in reporting, well, actually there's not a huge amount of changes in terms of what you can do with query functionality. So pretty much everything, the standard report types that you're probably familiar with, and the existing Q&A, they're all available, and the the aesthetics of the query builder have obviously changed a little bit. It looks pretty much the same, but it's been sort of cleaned up to look very much like the latest Infor 6.2 version of Sun Systems. Very clean, very minimal interface, but effectively the query builder interface is exactly the same. So all of those standard report types that you're familiar with, reference links, summary reports, detail reports, all of that kind of thing, they're of course still available in Q&A Evolve. With regards to sending data into Sun Systems from Q&A Evolve, again, that's of course entirely possible, but a couple of I guess enhancements in that respect are that if we're looking at Sun 4, we're loading data into Sun 4, then actually those text files that you import into Sun 4, they're created actually on the server side now as opposed to sitting around on the client. And if we're working with Sun 5 or 6, then Q&A Evolve now effectively connects directly into the SSC web service. So we're not creating XML files and then importing those in through transfer desk. We can fire the information straight in via the web service. So as we mentioned, anything to do with Q&A Executive, again, the key analysis elements of Q&A Executive have now been incorporated into Evolve in Excel. So detailed drill downs, expansions, breakouts, all of those kinds of things, they are now sitting in the ribbon in Microsoft Excel. So the idea being that this again makes Excel an even more powerful tool when analyzing data. And if we look at things like the drill path manager, so the ability to save pre-configured levels of drill down or drill through, again we can do that. So that was something you could obviously do in Vision Executive, but that's now been incorporated into Excel, and so the classic drill path manager, again, that's now been built into the Excel environment. Just in terms of sort of general product enhancements, now there is support for Excel automatic calculation. Again, this is a question that comes up again and again. But one thing I would say with this, and this is something we've tested, it says Infor say there's support for Excel automatic calculation, but what you need to bear in mind that this is actually only on native Excel formulas. So if you have Vision formulas or Q&A formulas inside a workbook, then you still need to manually recalculate those. So it's not a true automatic recalculation, so it's not fully real time. So one word of warning on that. However, again, these are sort of minor things, but there are a few things, a few sort of niggles previously with old versions of Q&A. If you were sending information into Sun, you didn't have Sun installed on your machine. You actually had to install the client user manager. Well, that's no longer the case because obviously all of that is done on the server side. Setup and maintenance, that's all now done on a single server-side setup utility as well. So again, the aim there is to sort of simplify the administration of the product. And as we said before, the user interface has been refactored, as Infor like to say, or it's really just sort of been cleaned up a little bit. So the the look and feel of the the main query builder windows, the filters, all of those things have been just sort of cleaned up a little bit, and very much the blue and white feel of the 6.2 release. And as we said before, Alert has actually now been built into Evolve as a standard part of the product. So if you do buy Evolve, then you automatically get Alert into the bargain, and Alert just sits as a dockable panel within Microsoft Excel. In terms of technical enhancements, there's a few things to note, and I guess one thing that historically has been a bit of an issue for supporting Q&A Vision is that if there's any sort of minor bug or there was some issue that needed to be addressed, historically there's no way of patching Q&A Vision. They had to wait for the next full release to come out, and effectively it was a complete reinstallation of the product. So every time you wanted to go from 10.1.3 to 10.1.4 or 10.1.5 or whatever, you had to effectively reinstall the product on top of itself, maybe just to take advantage of one small fix that had been incorporated into that release. So with this product, so with Q&A Evolve, the product is now patchable, and there'll be separate patches available both for the client side and for the server side. So what that means is it's a lot easier to apply patches. You don't have to completely reinstall the product, but also it means that Infor can be a lot quicker in pushing out things like emergency hotfixes or serious bugs. They can just issue those as a patch, and so the the actual release cycle for getting that stuff out will be a lot shorter. So we don't have to wait for the next full release of the product to become available. Infor support can issue a patch or a hotfix, which can then just be applied as necessary. Now, we said the product is fully 64-bit capable, so again, this was one of the major reasons for completely rewriting the products. As we said at the beginning of the presentation, the old code base for Q&A Vision is very dated technology, old VB6 code. That's now all been written in .NET, so it's now fully 64-bit compliant. So we don't have to have 32-bit versions of Microsoft Excel running on our servers, just so we can run Q&A Vision. So that's good. It's also fully Unicode compliant, so for people operating in multi-language environments, maybe combining data from Eastern European languages or East Asian languages with Western European languages. If you were previously, even with releases of Sun right up to 6.1, you still needed to have separate language collation business unit databases to handle those differences. Of course, with Sun 6.2 now being fully Unicode compliant, Q&A Evolve is also fully Unicode compliant as well. Although there will be separate data links required if you're using a Unicode version of the database versus a non-Unicode version of the database. All of the data links, so all of these SERDOCs as they as they're called, they're now stored centrally. So again, the idea being just to sort of simplify the management of the product. And there's a single centralized configuration database. So again, this is probably not something that you're necessarily aware of, but again, from a support perspective, is something that caused quite a lot of problems. There are some key configuration settings that are installed on every client with Q&A Vision, which were just sitting in the user profile on every installation. All of that has now been centralized, which makes it a lot easier to deploy and support. And as we said in the next point there, so removal of user profiles, again, the idea being to simplify that. And if we're connecting, again, if we're connecting, just connecting to the web service, one of the things we can introduce is the ability to provide a level of encryption of information between the client and the server using HTTPS. So the fact that we're now just connecting to a web service as opposed to using a direct database connection to the data means that we can introduce encryption of information as it passes between client and server. So that just to sort of brings us nicely onto the architecture of the new products. So just to sort of, again, I don't want to dwell too much on this, but it's really just to sort of emphasize that one of the fundamental problems with Q&A in releases up until now, especially with regards to performance, one of the things that majorly reduces the performance of Q&A Vision, apart from badly designed reports, is the fact that Q&A is purely a client-based tool, so every installation is effectively making a connection to the database. So the way Q&A historically works is that every client connects directly from the client machine straight into the Sun database. So there's a lot of information going up and down across the network. If you use things like terminal servers, Citrix servers, you may have one single installation of Excel or Q&A, but if you've got 10 users on there, each one of those 10 users is making a direct connection to the database. So of course, all of that that gets factored up several times and can negatively affect performance of your reports. Now with the new architecture, the way that this works is as we said at the beginning, if we start from the top of this diagram, everything from a client perspective is sitting in Microsoft Excel, so we have an add-in, and that add-in simply connects through a secure web service into the Q&A Evolve application server. So the web service actually controls the access to the database. So all of the clients just point at a single application server, and then the application server itself manages access to both the Q&A Evolve configuration database and any product databases, obviously Sun Systems, sitting on the database server. So what that means is a degree of the processing is actually taken away from the clients, and a lot of the processing is now done on the server, and the clients are just simply fed back with the end results of those queries. So a lot of the query processing is now moved away from the client, and that is actually happening on the server. Okay, so in terms of existing installations of Q&A. Now we did say Q&A Evolve is of course a completely separate product, but if you choose to move up to Q&A Evolve, then there are a few things you need to bear in mind. We do have some migration tools available in the product to convert things like current Q&A formulas to the equivalent syntax used in Evolve for the same report formulas. There's also, as part of the installation, a wizard or a centralized database migration which will upgrade the core Q&A product database, users, profiles, security, many serializations, and all of that kind of thing. And in terms of the client installation itself, it is it's not an upgrade, it is a new product, so it's a new installation, so it will be a new installation of the product. However, what we can do is we can actually run both versions of Q&A, so traditional Q&A and Q&A Evolve. Both of those clients can be installed on the same client at the same time, and both add-ins can actually run side by side in Excel. So what that means is, if you're gradually upgrading or gradually migrating reports, then you'll have the ability to run both products at the same time. One other thing that was actually not on this this slide, but just again, not sure how many of you are using Q&A alerts, but one of the benefits now of using Q&A alert is that all of the workbooks are actually stored in the database on the server. So again, this was not always the case previously. So Q&A alert workbooks are now actually encrypted and stored in the Q&A database on the server. So again, that makes the the management of the whole product a lot simpler. Implications for existing data links. Well, I mean, from a Sun Systems perspective, there's not many big implications. Obviously, the existing Sun Systems data links have been upgraded to work with Evolve, and any data links that work with Q&A 10 will also work with Q&A Evolve. There'll be a new data link specifically for Sun 6.2, and that will also there'll be two data links effectively for Sun Systems 6.2, one for traditional Q&A 10 and a separate 6.2 data link for Q&A Evolve. Any custom data links you have, if it's a standard data link, then that will work straight away. If you've made specific changes with scripts in there, then there's some steps you need to go through in order to upgrade those to work with Evolve. Okay, so those are sort of enhancements to the core, the core reporting engine, or what's different in the core reporting engine. The other, the other part of this equation, I guess, is that as a result of Infor merging the BI teams within Infor, and the desire to come up with a single BI and Q&A reporting offering, the second part of the the product suite within Q&A Evolve is aimed at the introduction of dashboards. So dashboards, in terms of pricing and modules, they're labeled Evolve BNI dashboards, but of course they'll be effectively priced separately. So let's just take a look at some of the, we'll talk about pricing at the end of the session, but if we just look at what's in there in terms of functionality, if we just have a quick look and we go through, again, the aim of the dashboards is really just to present any information that can be accessed from any product database via a Q&A data link. Is the ability to then present that information in any browser so that we can then push KPIs, reports out to the web. And the ability, as you can see here, that can run in any browser. So a dashboard is simply a widget that is powered by a Q&A query. It may be a little bit too small to see here. Effectively, every dashboard control on this page is a Q&A query. So if you were actually to go in and edit, or if you had a query that's been pushed out as part of a dashboard, you will be able to go in, edit the table on that, and you'll see that will then take you back to a Q&A query definition window that looks exactly the same as a Q&A query definition window that you may have accessed from within Excel or wherever. One thing to be aware of in terms of how the dashboards are designed, the actual construction of the dashboards themselves is done through a BI product called Application Studio. Application Studio is part of the Infor Performance Management Suite, and is actually the dashboarding tool, the report writing tool used to create dashboards in that product. That's now been brought across as a result of this merge, and the dashboard design for Q&A Evolve will also be done in this tool. So that's, again, it's a sort of full-blown Windows application that you use to design those dashboards. But in terms of how you write the queries to populate the the controls on the dashboard, the actual query design is the same as a standard Q&A query builder window. Okay, so very quickly, what does this mean for the the product roadmap? What's happening with the the current releases and what's expected to happen with Evolve. We said the two things are completely different. So I mean, effectively, there are two roadmaps. The Q&A 10.1. So this is the version of Q&A that we're all familiar with at the moment. So this is the existing version, still sold along with Sun Systems and with other data links. So that will continue to be. There'll be additional, I guess, bug fixes built into that product, but that product will become effectively maintenance only. So what that means is it's not that the product is no longer supported. As you can see there, the product will continue to be supported, not just through to the end of this year, but beyond. But effectively, any new functionality will be added into Q&A Evolve and not into the traditional version of Q&A. Again, the reason being that there's certain limitations to what can be done in that product in terms of the the legacy code. So Infor will continue to maintain that, but on a maintenance-only basis. So any bug fixes, any products issues will be addressed, but in any major new functionality, there'll be no major new functionality added to that product. That will actually be built into Q&A Evolve. So Q&A Evolve, when is it coming out? Well, it should have come out already, but as I said, we're still waiting to get the official release from Infor. But the plan is that is happening this month, and then over time, so that the version that's coming out at the moment will be, I think it will now be version 1.2. But over time, the long-term road, the long-term plan is that this will eventually, replace Q&A, but there's going to be a long path. I think we'll see. It's going to be a very gradual process. People are going to migrate slowly. I don't think it's going to be a complete overnight replacement. And as we said, again, Q&A Evolve will eventually be merged with a redesigned Office Plus, which is the Excel add-in for the performance management suite. So again, those two products will merge, and they will effectively become one product. And then this is the way the product is going over time. Now, I did have a solution demo lined up, but I can just show you very quickly. Again, we don't have the final version of the product, but I can just show you, just to give you a quick flavor of what it may look like. This is an early release of the product we've had for a couple of months. We haven't got the final version, but just to give you a quick glance. So as we said, the traditional Q&A and Q&A Evolve can quite happily exist side by side. So if I just log on to this, and you can see everything is within the Q&A, within the Microsoft Excel environment. Now, the key thing that's missing from this early release is, of course, the analysis option. So I don't have all of the drill down, breakout, expansion in here. But what we will be doing as soon as we have the final release of the product, we'll be setting up some separate webinars to look at both the Excel add-in in a lot more detail, but also to take a look at the dashboard functionality as well. But you can see here, you're probably familiar with some of these things in here. So as we said, the actual layout of the query builder window has been cleaned up a little bit. So you can see summary reports. You've still got the traditional query builder window, but it's just sort of been a little bit cleaned up, or refactored, as Infor like to say. So the process of writing a query, as you can see here, it's exactly the same. So you can still do whatever it is you're used to doing, but it's just a little bit now, of course, there's no transactions in that range of accounts, but let's just take a look at something else. but yeah, you get the general idea. So I mean, in terms of actually writing reports, it's not a big leap if you're used to working with the existing version of Q&A. You know, things you can do, as we said, you know, Alert is now actually built straight into Excel. So if you wanted to actually schedule this report to run, or to be exported to a PDF, or to do something else, you can actually do that straight from within Q&A Excel. So if you wanted this report to be scheduled to extract, you know, on a regular basis, you know, email itself to somebody, or save it as a PDF on the network somewhere, then you can do that directly from within your report design. You know, we said the alert scheduler now sits as part of Excel itself. So if we just fire up Q&A alert, you can see, you know, that's just again sitting as a dockable panel within Microsoft Excel. So the idea being, you know, within here, you know, you would have, you know, drill downs, expansions, and you can manage those drill paths directly from within Excel. The other things, of course, the data send functionality. Again, that works in exactly the same way. So that's really all we wanted to go through this afternoon. So I think, you know, this was really a I guess an initial session just to introduce you, just to give you a heads up of some of the things that are coming in Q&A Evolve, and perhaps more importantly to answer any questions you may have. So what I'm going to ask Emma to do now is just open up the webinar session for any questions that we may have from anybody this afternoon.
Thanks, Richard. Please can anyone let me know if you have any questions, either by raising your hand or by typing a question in on your keypad. Thank you. 2 questions have already come in, Richard. One is both from Alan, the first one being in relation to data send. Will it send data directly to Sun Systems, or do you still need to use the ledger import?
Yeah, okay, so the question there is, yeah, so it will send, again, that depends on because we're connecting direct through SSC, that really depends on the posting options that you choose as part of the data send. So, yeah, if you don't want it to sit around in the ledger import control desk, then if you choose post or post if no errors, if you're posting straight through into Sun, then that will post straight through into Sun. If there's any errors, it will of course reject it, then you'll find it sitting in the ledger import control desk. But that's again, you know, there's ways of doing that. Actually, within the existing Q&A product, you don't need Evolve to do that. But the way that that's managed is just simply by the the posting options that are specified on the input payload as part of the data send. So, you know, post if no errors, or what have you. So that's hopefully answered that question. What was the next question, Emma?
The next one was in relation to offline formula. Will it be workbook specific in Citrix, or does it apply to all workbooks?
Okay. Can you maybe is it possible to is that a question from Alan?
Yes, yeah. Yeah.
Is it possible to unmute Alan?
I can do, yeah.
Yeah, maybe Alan,
just try that now.
If you could just rephrase that one, I just wanted to confirm what you mean by that.
I've just unmuted Alan.
Alan, you there? Okay, so the question was around, was it offline?
Offline formula. Will it be workbook specific in Citrix, or does it apply to all workbooks?
I need to check that, but my understanding is that, you know, currently offline formula relates to a specific workbook, although I may need to check that because it's been a while since I used that functionality myself. So I'll make a note of that one, Alan, and I'll get back to you after the session.
Okay, Richard. Alan said he'll ask later anyway, but he had one more question. Vision Executive, is it accessible via Excel?
No, so that's, yeah, so yeah, Vision Executive is no more. So that, yeah, if you're using Evolve, there is no Vision Executive. That's the key thing. So Vision Executive function, a first tranche of Vision Executive functionality has been incorporated into Vision Excel, but effectively there is no more standalone Vision Executive in Q&A Evolve. So, yeah, you can write a report that looks like an exec report, and then you can use the expand, breakdown, breakout, drill down functionality, use the drill path manager within Excel, but it's not it's not a true standalone report as it would be in Q&A Executive. So that's a pretty fundamental difference, and that's one thing to be aware of. One thing I think carefully needs to be, you need to do a bit of careful analysis if you're an extensive user of Vision Executive, is to make sure, well, this is obviously something we can assist with, but to make sure, do a bit of gap analysis to make sure that you're not going to significantly lose any functionality, or what's the effort in rewriting those reports in Q&A Evolve versus continuing to use Executive to do that.
Thanks, Richard. No further questions so far.
Okay, so as I said, once we get our hands on the on a fully working version of the product from Infor, which I'm expecting is going to happen in the next couple of weeks, we're going to set up some bit more interactive webinars to deal with, take a look at some of the functionality, report building in a little bit more detail. Another thing, again, I talked a little bit about performance, because I suspect that performance will be a big topic as well. But again, just from my own experience talking to Infor, I don't know how much we haven't had any numbers from them, but I'm kind of curious to test the performance of Q&A Evolve with regards to running reports. So one of the things we may be doing as well is just obviously the Eclipse. We're going to be doing some internal testing on performance of Q&A Evolve versus previous version of Q&A and versus some other products. So what we may do as part of those subsequent webinars is just sort of give you some examples of how that works. Because again, I haven't seen any sort of performance numbers from Infor on this. My gut feeling is the overall performance is going to be improved because quite a bit of the processing is now done on the application server as opposed to happening purely on the client. But as I'm sure you are, I'm pretty anxious to get my hands on a full version of the product so we can do some extensive performance testing on that, and we'll keep all of our customers appraised of what we find out. Okay, so if there's no more questions, what I'll do is I'll leave these contact details up on the screen. If anybody's got any questions regarding anything you've seen this afternoon, any questions regarding how are the modules structured, what is the pricing, just with regards to pricing, we said Q&A Evolve is it's a separate product, but existing users are entitled to upgrade free of charge. However, it isn't, as we said, in some cases a direct like-for-like upgrade path. So in terms of getting access to the product, Q&A Evolve, current thinking is that this will be an entitlement upgrade for all existing users. Now, one thing that hasn't been finalized in terms of the pricing is whether there'll be a nominal charge, a small nominal charge for those customers who don't currently own Alert. Because effectively, because Q&A Alert is now incorporated as part of the core Excel product, Infor have yet to decide whether to apply a nominal charge, and for people who don't already have Q&A Alert, to take account of the fact that they'll effectively, if they do upgrade, they'll be getting Alert into the bundle. Whether they want Alert or not is a different question. But so that's one thing that hasn't yet been finalized. But the general thinking is Q&A Evolve will be an entitlement upgrade for existing customers. If anybody was using Q&A Motion, the current web based version, the mobile version of Q&A, that is going to be discontinued, and that will be replaced by the BI dashboards, although again the pricing has yet to be confirmed. And in terms of the pricing of the dashboard modules for Sun Systems users, again that is separate, and again final pricing we're still waiting to see that, but effectively the way it's going to be broken down is it will be broken down into designers, so effectively what's called a professional user, so somebody who has access to the full-blown dashboard designer, as opposed to consumer licenses for consumers, just people who access dashboard reports via the web, which will obviously be priced a lot lower than the full-blown professional users. So again, that pricing is still to be finalized, but of course, as soon as we get further information on that, or if you have any specific questions on that, then get in touch with us. So with that, if there's no more questions, I'll leave those contact details up on the screen. Thank you very much for taking the time out to have a look at this with us this afternoon. As I said, we'll be running some more sessions on this in the next few weeks, so please stay tuned, and hopefully we'll see you again on another webinar. Thank you.